That's impressive. So you guys
Yeah.
were able to pay down during the pandemic $150,000 worth of debt
Yeah.
in about 18 months.
So I would say just short of 2 years. We still have a much smaller balance, but it's just short of 2 years. We I think we paid down 135 by now.
You're listening to the Real FI Podcast, where we discuss time-tested tricks, techniques, and strategies for pursuing financial independence today, so that we can enjoy a better tomorrow. A better tomorrow. Financial independence isn't about getting rich quick. It's about cultivating a foundation to grow financially, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Let's figure out how to kick the 9 to 5. Here are your hosts, Patrick and James.
Welcome back to another edition of the Real FI Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McGrath, with my co-host, James Rippion. How's it going, James?
Going well, man. Living the life.
That's what I love to hear. That's what I love to hear. It's a beautiful Wednesday. It's 80 degrees here in Maryland. Hopefully it's beautiful everywhere else. I'm sure it's beautiful where our guest today is at. We've got a great guest. We are super excited. Her name is T, and she's here to drop some nuggets. T, how are you doing today?
Hi guys, I'm super good. Yes, Hawaii's beautiful weather. I think we are in the 80s as well today. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. James, kick it off and let's get this thing started.
So T, we're super excited to have you on this podcast and kind of open up all the cool things that you're doing and kind of talk to you about financial independence and everything that you know as it relates to money and finances. But why don't you take us back a little bit and tell us a little bit about where you came from, a little bit about your background, and maybe tell us a little bit about why financial independence is important to you.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So I live in Hawaii, but I am from Tahiti. So right, different country, different culture, mindset, and all that. I was raised by a single mom. I have two older siblings. I am the baby. I was also born. Well, she had me at when she was almost 40 years old. So there's also like a almost a generational gap, a big generational gap there. When it comes to finances, I will say that my mom never liked finances whatsoever. Um, I was just talking to a friend yesterday where she probably did her books twice a year. She had, the stack of checkbooks that, you had to handwrite everything and then you keep like that little stub there. And she would just kind of go through that. So financially, I wasn't really exposed to opportunities or to a wealth of money, really. The one thing that my mom always said was that her two brothers, my uncles, were smart businessmen because they own rentals. But it wasn't a subject that came up often or what or any of that. It's just something I kind of always kept in the back of my mind. At 18 years old, I just graduate from high school. I meet this Maui boy and I came to Maui to be with this guy. And I've been on Maui for almost 20 years now. So most of my life is here. And as a matter of fact, I will say that I sort of entered society here on Maui. I never had a job before. I never had to do any kind of household chores as I was the baby and spoiled. So kind of thrown into adulthood sort of at a kind of a young age without much preparation, including getting a job, budgeting money, making money, and spending money, um, and also learning about credit. So, but that is kind of my background.
That's awesome. I think every one of us has like those experiences with family members or friends that, you get to see like the total rich dad, poor dad perspective from the people you associate with in life. I know I had a lot of that, growing up, just to give perspective on some of my friends' families and then my family, and then just kind of comparing those situations. Tell us a little bit about your uncles that had the rentals and what that kind of looked like, and what sounded so interesting to you about that.
Yeah, so where we lived, it was a super small like street with 4 homes because my mom had 3 siblings and their parents gave them each a home. And uh, 2 of them were rentals of my uncles. So they would come maybe once a month just to check in on their rentals. But each of my uncles also had businesses. One of them, who's the youngest of my uncles, he is a major farmer in Tahiti. And so he owned that business for sure. But he was able to acquire his own homes before inheritance and all that. So once inheritance came in from my grandparents, then he just turned them into rentals because he already owned, land and homes. But he was also a business owner. And then the other uncle just actually was like a major landlord in Tahiti. And, that's kind of, I just always knew, and I was always good with numbers. I have like the scientific brain where numbers just make sense and to me. So I just always knew that, all right, you owe money. Well, maybe in their case, they didn't because they inherited homes. But as a landlord, you owe money, you charge rent. That gap is kind of yours. Like, so obviously it was just the simple math. Income from rentals, and then you've got a mortgage payment. That difference is yours. I obviously did not know all the little things, the taxes and capex and all that, but it's always been in the back of my mind. And I remember at like 20 something years old, my uh, husband back then, I had told him like, hey, we should just buy a home, even though we were still living with his parents. I'm like, we should just buy a home and like rent it out and like see how this whole thing works. We never did, but it was just kind of like something like I know there is something there. And the other thing was I always knew like retirement was a lot of money for most people. Social Security wasn't a lot of money, and I told myself, how are we going to live off of $500 a month or $800 a month, like whatever that number ends up being? How are we going to live off of that if right now I can barely live off of that amount? Like it's gonna be impossible. So I just always told myself, you're gonna have to do something now to if you're gonna work until you're in your 60s, at least after that you're not gonna like be banking or hoping for retirement money, pension, or social security, whatever your plan was. You better kind of like figure things out now and just not be completely dependent on something like that and like be stuck somewhere.
That totally makes sense. I mean, and I think that that's a thought process that goes through every single person's mind, is like, what am I going to do? A lot of times that happens later in life, or sometimes, and people think that they can't start when anyone can start at any time, so it's first getting that light switch to go off. So it sounds like you had that light switch go off, but so now bring us to the forward where you got started. Like, where did it all start? Take us back to, that first deal, or, and where you're at now. Like, what does that look like now? We know like why you wanted to get into it and your past on seeing, people that had done it. So bring us to the present now and tell us about what you got going on.
Yes, awesome. So there is a huge gap between the idea and the knowledge that this is a strategy that works for retirement and when I actually started. Many reasons, I feel like I was in my 20s. I definitely enjoyed my 20s. I'm a dancer, so I was in the entertainment business for a really long time. We do not have those conversations about, hey, future, plan for your future and whatever. I wasn't, I wasn't a young mom either. So, planning for the future came in really late in my life. I would say later than a lot of people nowadays. So I became a mom 28 or 29 years old. And then I started hustling with multiple jobs. So I went years working my butt off with 2, 3 jobs between dancing and I have a financial background. I worked for a bank and I was a manager. Uh, So all of that just kind of takes away from, hey, like you're planning for the future and all that. So now we are in 2017. Is that 33 years old? Can't remember. 30 something, 2017. Fortune Builders ad comes on the radio. Hey, come to our free workshop. I show up. I'm interested because this is real estate investing. And they were validating everything that I had like in the back of my mind. Go to the 3-day workshop. Let's go to the 3-day workshop. We get deeper into it. And I'm like, wow, okay, again, validating everything that I was thinking about. So let's go and let's get into this mentorship. 2017. That same year, I lose my mom to lung cancer, and I had to take a break from a lot of things. And all of that, like 2017, kind of put a huge financial burden on my life, I guess, because I paid for this really expensive mentorship, and we had a lot of costs for when my mom's passing and funeral and lawyer costs, and that lasted quite a bit. And I also I took off from my life here and I went to Tahiti for 2 months. I was making no money. My husband just kind of had to like get by over here, and we were just racking up debt and racking up debt. No regrets, obviously, but then that debt, and then going to I feel like I went through a few months of depression for sure. That started like weighing very heavily on me, and I was always like, hey, you got this mentorship, there is something there, you could be doing something, but I was kind of choosing not to. So now fast forward to 2020 or 2019. Again, I'm still working, I'm still hustling like crazy. And my husband, at the very end of 2019, he just like had a talk, and he was like, uh, your daughter and I don't see you. We're just, like you come home, we're asleep. I leave very early in the morning. You just drop her off to school and then you're gone. You just see her in the morning. I don't see you. Can you like rethink your life? Because, she's growing up without a mom and it's not cool. And of course, like that tugged at my heart. I'm like, okay, cool. What can we do? So I had a dance school. I opened a dance school in 2018. Um, it didn't take off or anything, but it was income. It kind of replaced my W2 income. So I told myself, well, let me do the dance school and real estate, and I'll kind of like lay off on the W2. That was at the end of 2019. Within a couple of months, right, I give my notice and I'm like, okay, I'll just work 1 or 2 days a week. My job allowed me to just continue doing that. And then the pandemic hit, and I now kind of became a work from home mom because my daughter was home. Everything was on Zoom. And that is what helped me with real estate and with my finances. So in early 2020, I took a look at our finances. And I even hired a financial coach to help me because I just couldn't see clearly enough within all the debt that I had and all the goals that I had. Hired a financial coach. And so she is a girlfriend of mine. She helped me just kind of organize my thoughts around money. She helped me take a look inward into our financial behavior. And she was very understanding, no judgment there. So my debt payoff journey starts in 2020, mid-pandemic and all that, as well as my real estate investing journey. They kind of both start at the same time. And that first year, 2020, I sold 2 wholesale deals. I made a total of $15,000 from wholesaling before taxes. I didn't touch that money. It went back into marketing for real estate and a mentorship. So I got into a separate mentorship, the sub 2 mentorship in 2020. Everything else, my debt payoff was just from budgeting, managing our money, and just, taking a look at all the ins and outs, canceling some subscriptions, doing nothing. Basically, we couldn't do anything. Everything was shut down anyway. But we also accepted food boxes, free food boxes from the local food bank over here every single week for weeks on out. And we just lived extremely frugally so that I could pay down debt. So like I needed to see that big boulder like come down a little bit. So that's kind of, right into all of this, like real estate and the debt payoff journey started at the same time in 2020.
So what I
So
think is super valuable about what you were saying is, you looked at COVID as an opportunity. It wasn't something that you were just going to curl up under a rock and just
Mhm.
hibernate until the end of it. You saw it as an opportunity to, tackle some of those obstacles that you're facing at that point in your life, which was, a little bit of debt. If you don't mind sharing, how much debt were you guys, trying to wrangle up?
$150,000. So that was mainly credit cards and one card payment and one line of credit. Everything was maxed out, basically. Yeah.
wow, I mean that's impressive. So you guys
Yeah.
were able to pay down during the pandemic $150,000 worth of debt
Yeah.
in about 18 months.
So I would say just short of 2 years. We still have a much smaller balance, but it's just short of 2 years. We I think we paid down 135 by now. Like I'm still able every month to put like, a couple of thousands here and there. It's just now, thankfully, after sort of like relearning financial behavior, canceling things, reprioritizing where our money was going. Now it's a habit. It's just our way of life. But it was super hard in the beginning. Um, yeah, it was really, really tough and tough on our couple as well. It's not easy to restrict so much. But I'm obviously we are so glad that we did. And the thing back then, it's something that I kind of push now, especially on my social media platforms, is anything that is worth it is difficult, as we all know, like hard work pays off, blah, blah, blah. But it's usually hard only in the beginning. And people maybe don't see it because it's just like, oh, I have to learn all of this. Like, I'm not even going to get into this. But you do it for like 2 months, like, it becomes so easy. Anything in general in life that is hard and has so much worth and value, it's hard in the beginning, and then it's just natural, like it's almost part of your identity almost, or something. So yeah, it was hard in the beginning, lots of arguments. But once we started, so that first year we paid down $40,000. Like I was showing him the numbers, and he's like, okay, all right, so it's working. All right, cool. You know, I'll lay off and all that. And then, yeah, the second year, through real estate, I was able to make way more money, and all of that went to the debts as well.
I think
That
something
is
that's totally underappreciated is the psychological element to debt. I mean, there's so much more to it than just the numbers. It's negatively self-reinforcing. If you're
Mhm.
just going to keep going down the bad path, and you can kind of justify, well, I have this expense and I need to take out a little bit more credit card debt to pay it. And, the money's going to come, and you get stuck in this kind of, you know, optimistic complacency. Like, I'm sure it'll work itself out. But what really causes the difference to be made is taking those steps to resolve it. And on top of that, the psychology also goes towards like your spouse and your significant other when you're trying to resolve um, debt like that, because not everyone's going to see it from the same perspective or want to tackle it, as aggressively as the other person might. So, it's such a multifaceted thing. I know personally, when I look at debt, it's like a love-hate kind of thing. Like, I'm sure, gone through your experience with the bad debt of credit cards, and now you're getting into the real estate side of things, where you're kind of looking at, as we talked about earlier, you got the income and the mortgage payment, and then the arbitrage between the two. That could be good debt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's so huge to take that giant number and squish it down and almost pay it off in 2 years. I mean, there's people out there with student loans that much take 20, 30 years, never pay it off. So that is extremely, extremely impressive. So let's roll into now. Tell us about this real estate business. I mean, you said you wholesaled 2 deals and got 15 grand and jumped into another mentorship for subject to, it sounds like. So tell us that. I mean, I'd really love to learn about, subject to and, what you're doing right now in real estate.
Awesome. So the Pace Morby's mentorship is called Sub 2, and Pace Morby is a genius at creative financing, where we buy houses without needing a bank in the transaction. So seller finance, if a home you're trying to buy is free and clear and is owned free and clear by your seller, you can, instead of getting a loan from the bank and then making payments to the bank, you can create this loan between the seller and yourself, and you make payments to the seller. So selling, for super easy numbers, they sell the home to you for $20,000 and they want $1,000 a month. So in 20 months, you're going to be paid off, right? So these are easy numbers. There's more into it. Subject to is when we take over someone's mortgage. The mortgage stays in place with the seller. We then take over the payments. Maybe basically we're going to make payments to their mortgage company. And if there's room in the deal, again, all of these terms are very creatively created. We can perhaps give them some kind of cash flow, for selling us this home on subject to. Perhaps if we want to do a fix and flip, we're going to take it over subject to for 6 months while we do the renovation and sell it. And then we pay them off and plus some, like we pay off their loan and plus something, like really depends. So these are the top 2 strategies in creative financing. And Mr. Pace Morby, he's super knowledgeable and he's a really good, not necessarily salesperson, but he knows how to teach us to build rapport and such. And he just makes creative financing more, he normalizes it, everyone that I talk to, all they know is, I need to go to the bank. I need, my local bank, my credit union, or a big bank. That's how I'm going to get, and I need to get approved. I need 2 years worth of, all of that. I'm sure you know how that works. Well, now I'm in real estate investing and I learn about hard money lending, private lending, creative financing. That's a lot more interesting. There isn't necessarily more money to be made. It just makes a transaction easier to achieve, So, but it's super interesting.
I've got a question here. So I love subject to. I haven't been able to do one yet. So I tried to do one, but unfortunately, the seller contacted his bank and asked if that was okay. So how do you get around, the due on transfer clause? So they're obviously transferring the title into your guy's name, but the loan is staying in their name, and you guys are making the payments directly to the bank on their behalf. So it's not going on your credit or anything. So have you ever ran into that issue, and how do you skirt around that without letting the bank know that that's happening?
Okay, so I personally haven't done a subject to nor a seller finance. I'm just aware of the processes. What Pace Morby has in place is he actually has the whole system set up, and we just kind of copy and paste his system. So we put a servicing company in place. They charge a super small fee, but basically it's kind of like a servicing company for a mortgage company, a regular lender, I should say, where they make sure they're collecting your payment and they're going to pay that seller's mortgage company, and they make sure that property taxes and insurance is in place. So honestly, these conversations, they come before, like all of that, it just comes in before, and we let them know, look, you can tell your bank, but this deal is not going to go through. So if you do want this deal to go through, it's not that's the thing, it's like a super gray area where it's not illegal, but banks don't like that, but it's not illegal.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
because, so the reason there's a service provider in between is it's not going from John Smith to Patrick McGrath's bank account. It's going from John Smith to XBX Property
Yeah,
Management or something
servicing
like that.
and then the lender. Yeah. So
Exactly. So that makes a
he
lot of
did
sense.
share with us that it's happened to him and the bank, I don't know, he ended up contacting the bank and he's like, what do you need me to do? So he ended up just raising private money and like he paid it off and he just kind of had to restart all over. The other thing is the sellers. So that's the thing with subject to where you have to cover everything on the front end before I would say paperwork is signed. The other thing is they can't cancel their insurance, so you have to let them know, like if you cancel it, your mortgage company is gonna be made aware, right? So you don't want to do that. Like you just basically don't want to raise flags on what's going on here. Because I mean, I've heard that some lenders just close their eyes, and those are rare, but most lenders they'll call due on sale,
Due
something
on
like
sale
that.
clause. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we go around. It's mainly like just building rapport and educating them. The other thing that Pace has in place, and I'm not sure that it might be with that servicing company that he uses. Within a year, somehow they create this letter to the credit bureaus saying that the mortgage holder is not, I don't want to say the wrong thing because I've never done it, so this could be wrong, but it somehow they're not responsible for that debt. There's a little something. It's drawn by this piece of paper. It's drawn by a lawyer or something. So I'm not too sure how this whole thing happens, but because right, if someone's selling it to you and they don't get rid of a mortgage and they need to buy another place, how are they going to qualify if they still have a mortgage? So all of that, is really all of these conversations need to happen beforehand, and he trains on that. So within our Hawaii network, I know people who have done subject to and seller finance deals. So I know that when that happens, I'll just like go to them and be like, oh my gosh, help me. Like someone's willing to take my higher offer on the subject to or on the seller finance. Help me. We also have access to transaction coordinators. We pay them a fee and they just drop all of the documents and it all goes through title and escrow. And so mortgage stays in the seller's name, deed comes into the buyer's name.
Very
Yeah,
That's
and
interesting.
great.
not a lot of title companies are gonna be willing to do that. So you also have to find a title company who's gonna be willing to do that.
I found that as well, even for, just regular wholesale deals, you'll have a lot of title companies that just don't want to touch it for one reason or another. So that just speaks to the importance of building out your team ahead of time and knowing those people who you can go to for asking questions when these interesting situations pop up. Because you don't want to be caught,
Yeah.
almost not knowing the answers or being stuck thinking you can get to the next step, but facing that hurdle.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. My wholesales, I was lucky because we kind of did it off the deal. Like I got the property under contract, but because I had built so much rapport with the sellers that, they knew, I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to be the end buyer. Okay, I'm going to go and find someone who wants this, and I'm sure I'll have no problem finding it. So I find the end buyer. I actually did what's called the reverse wholesaling, where I found the end buyer and I marketed to that end buyer's buy box. So, I get under contract. I'm like, are you going to take it at this amount? Yes. Okay, cool. I want this much. Okay, cool. And then when we went so the end buyer myself, we went to the title company and they were like, would it be cool if we just put the entire contract between your seller and this end buyer? Could we do that? So I spoke to the seller. I'm like, "Are you okay?" Like she's basically gonna take it over. I'm sorry if this is weird, but it's not. We spoke to the title company, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." They were in the district situation. They needed to close like last month. So they just didn't care. So they're like, "Whatever. I just want money. Whatever you got to do. It's legal. Where do I sign?" So yeah. So uh, on as far as creative financing, yeah, the title company kind of matters.
So let's talk about your reverse wholesaling and developing that buy box. So I hear that. I can kind of think of what that might mean, but why don't you describe what that is and how that relates to your buyers in your wholesale transactions?
Okay, so every investor, every cash buyer has a very specific, like not very, but more or less, they have a really specific buy box. And usually your buy box includes location, neighborhood class, ABCs, usually, depends on their comfort level, and then a price point. Um, so that you kind of know, all right, if they want a class B neighborhood at that range, like I'm gonna have to get, I'm gonna have to just mark it here or there. Um, and yeah, honestly, that's kind of what it is. And once you get something on contract, you just hustle to, you prove it to them that you this is gonna work, right? So my very first wholesale deal, I found it through driving for dollars. And then I came home. I don't know, we had a list of maybe 15 to 20 properties, came home and I, print my own letters here, stamp and send it out. I think within a week, yeah, within a week, one person calls us and they're like, I'm ready to sell. Um, I didn't think too much of it because I've gotten very close to like buying properties, whether wholesale for myself, and then they would just back out after meeting me or something. I'm not a very good like seller, like salesperson, really. Like I'm pretty like black on white. This is this, and it if it doesn't work, I can see what I can do. But anyway, so we went to the property. I brought my end buyer that I was like, hey, this would work for you. So she came along and it was super scary. Yeah, it was a super scary situation. The house, I don't even know if water was working or something. Like it was pretty crazy. Um, Big lot, two-story home, great layout, vaulted ceiling. It's just the owner just completely let it go. And so we walk out of there, we took our pictures and videos, and I kind of started like talking price, like, hey, what are you looking for? He's like, well, this. I'm like, listen, this was in the pandemic too, where we didn't know where the market was going. I actually didn't foresee what is going on, so I thought everything was gonna go like south. So I expressed that. I'm like, honestly, I don't think we could do it at that price point. We're in mid-pandemic. I don't know how this could possibly work, honestly. So dropped it down. And he was extremely motivated. Like that is really what played in my favor. I could have given him, I don't know, 100K on this $500,000 house. He would have taken it basically. But we didn't, we kind of made it fair, and it was a very fair offer. I think 375. We ended up getting this home at 375. But I mean, we had like every bad thing possible in it. I don't think there was termite issues, but it was a drug home. I think there was just a lot of illegal activities there. Um, After the clean out, when the junk removal company came by and cleaned out, they said, yeah, we could probably build like three cars, car seats and fenders and car. It was pretty crazy. So um, m- luckily, my end buyer had, she was kind of like, I'll get in. It's a super scary situation, but I'm not gonna let fear uh lead me here. So I'll take it on, and I'll give you, how much do you want for it? And I was like, well, if if I can continue learning through you, because I didn't know anything about construction, such like, I'll just give it to you for $5,000. Take it over. There was no money on my part. Like she put in the EMD and all that. But anytime I have questions, or if I want to come and like visit the property, just to be sort of like just to see with my eyes progress and ask questions, I'd like to be involved. She was like, yep, no problem. And that's how we closed on the first one, on my very first deal. So reversing is just going to the buyers first, reverse wholesale. And you find out what they're gonna buy, how much and all that. You just as much as you can, and then you target your marketing there. Good area, like, yeah. So that's what reverse wholesaling was for me.
That's great. I mean, I think that's a great strategy. You find a person who's got the cash, you find the property they want, you link the two together, and you make some money. So that sounds awesome. So tell us where you're at right now. You know, do you have any rentals? How many wholesale deals have you done this year? And kind of, you know, what that all looks like. So, you know, we can progress down your financial independence journey. So what's it look like right now?
All right. It's kind of easy. So 2020, two wholesales, lots of learning, lots of networking. 2021, bought my first rental property here. It's a condo, rental property here, 2021. One hotel. Are you familiar with wholesaling?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's when you
it's
would.
kind of like yeah, it's like a fix and flip, but all you do is clean it out and then sell it on the MLS. Okay, one hotel. That I want to say brought me $50,000, and then a super light fix and flip. The place was just dated, so all we did was paint, upgrade. We added backsplash. We didn't change. It wasn't. There was no gut, no nothing. Like, it was repainting everything and like what do they call it, cutting and then patching up. Yeah, and then we upgraded all the hardware because it was a bit dated. And out of that, I walked away with a little over $30,000. And then at the end of the year, 2021, I bought two rental properties in Indianapolis. So I ended up going out of state. Now in 2022,
right,
yeah, go.
So, all right. So you found this deal as a wholesale deal. You got it under contract, and then the seller allowed you to fix up the property, or you actually bought it and then sold it?
Okay, so the wholesale, what a wholesale means is you buy it off market. Actually, it doesn't matter how you buy it, but you basically do very little to the property, and you just like, it's almost like a double close. But you double close on the MLS. So like, you buy it, you have to fully finance
Retail
it.
wholesale almost, right? So like
Yeah,
you're selling
yeah,
it
there
in
you go.
MLS instead of to an off-market buyer.
Yeah. And
I got you.
I wasn't gonna do that. I wanted to get into a project, but when we got it is when a lot of the construction costs like started like just rising every 2 to 3 months, and we got scared. We're like, oh, like, I don't know if we can do this, because everything, like, we had to redo. We would need a lot of permitting, and permitting in Hawaii is a huge component to your holding cost. If you start getting into permitting, you can't do anything. Like, you can maybe clean the yard, but you can't touch anything in or on the house. And I didn't want to get into that. It's definitely not for a first deal, you know. So we ended up buying it. So we bought it as a short sale. Bought it as a short sale, and because so that whole thing took months. By the time we closed, like, the market started just getting super, super hot here, and we're like, should we try? Like, let's just put it on the market for like 2 weeks and see what the response is. And I mean, the first day we got it under contract.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing. All right, so
those are rare, honestly. So
yeah,
yeah.
well, you know, just a little, just throwing it back up there. Yeah, so you actually had to purchase it. That was my whole thing. So,
Yeah.
all right, so we got 50K on that one, 30K, 35K when you're fix and
On
flip,
this one.
and now you've got 3 rental properties. So that's fantastic. So you've done all that. So now give us an idea of what your goal is. Like, what's your financial independence goal? Like, you know, things are starting to progress, the snowball's starting to get bigger. So, you know, what's that number that you're looking for? for your financial independence?
Um, I honestly, as opposed to popular opinion, I do not have a number. I have an idea. So the thing is, my husband loves his job. Yes, he would love to not do it, but we both know he'd be miserable without a job. So he loves his job, and he now makes a really good income. So I would I would say easily maybe $10,000 of positive cash flow after everything. Um, but I'm not like putting a number like that to my goals, because I don't want to be I have good momentum right now, and I don't want to be um stuck on the numbers, because I feel like I will l- pass on certain opportunities right now. So it's just where I am at my sort of like stage in my investing career. But this year, I kind of have really big goals. I want 12 doors in Indianapolis. Like the market, love my team over there. I want 12 doors. So in January, we got COVID. So I got stuck at home, and I ended up, my first day of COVID, I ended up buying a place and wanted to keep it. It ended up working out better as a fix and flip. So now I think we're gonna be, I don't think we'll be done at the end of April, but probably early May, we'll be done with renovations and staging and putting it on the market. So that was going to be the beginning of my 12 doors this year. But I basically just hustled on lead generation after that place, and I got under contract and had to fall out of contract so many times. But then last week or the week before, like just all within a week, we got under contract on 3 deals that are going to work great as long-term holds. So honestly, I want 12 doors. If they each give me $100 of positive cash flow a month, I will be happy. I'm not, I'm more into the learning. I'm still learning. Like I'm a forever student. If I focus on one thing, I'm pretty sure I'll be passing on too many opportunities. And I don't see, I I'm able to find deep discounted deals. I'll survive, whatever might happen. So as long as
That's
I make
really
$100 or break even, I'm happy.
that's so I mean, I think that's great, because you're right. A lot of people do focus on that big number, when they're starting out, and it's kind of like this big creeping thing. And you already focused on a big number, which was your debt, and you accomplished and you got that all down. So that's really exciting. I think that makes a lot of sense, that you're pushing towards just grinding and building and seeing where that takes you. So I think that's awesome. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with T on this one. I know Patrick, he's got these really concrete financial goals for like the cash flow per month net. I'm kind of on the other side of that with T, and I like to look at it like number of properties. So that's kind of how I set my goals. I know a lot of people, and it kind of, I just guess, depends on how your brain works and how you process goals. And there's a lot of different ways for people to set those benchmarks for themselves. And you got to find what works best for you. For me personally, I've got a number of properties in my mind. Sounds like T's kind of in the same boat with that. And we acknowledge and we understand, like, hey, if we get those properties, we're going to have that cash flow coming in. We're going to have those tax deductions. We're going to have that mortgage principal pay down, and it's all going to build equity, and it's going to keep going. And it kind of simplifies it a little bit more and makes it almost, at least in my mind, a little bit more attainable and measurable.
Yeah. And so I could make more. So I don't know why. That's probably like the worst business advice ever. All of my rentals are under market rents. It's not that I'm not greedy, but I favor longevity and tenancy over having headaches every single month year. Like imagine owning 20 properties and you've got to turn every year because perhaps you're not priced right, or like I am not dealing with 20 turns a year. Like I would much rather make it nice and decent under market value. Stay there, please, forever. Like, I hear a lot of my landlord friends, they're like, oh yeah, we have families that have been there like 15 years. Like, wow, this is cool. Like, you kind of don't have, all you have is like maintenance, maybe, you're not gonna, you don't have to all the turns. And like in Indy, I have a property management company. They every turn they cost a lot of money because I lose out a month or two of rent, right? However long this whole place is vacant, and then they take the deposit and they take the first month. It's like, um, anyway, so that's just me right now. But maybe you'll share this with me. Our goals and our threshold for stress changes. Like, so it might be different in a year. I honestly want to get, like, my bigger goal is honestly to get into small multifamilies, like 5 and up. That's where I want to be. Um, I love single family homes as rentals, but I would much rather get into the small multifamilies. I don't need the 120 unit building also, but I would love to get like a 5 or 6 unit building. And yeah, just kind of learning that. So I honestly, that's probably what's next. If I could get one this year, like that's probably like half of my goal, right? So that would be awesome.
So I totally understand like your thought process on that, like having a little bit below market rent so you don't get that turnover, because people feel like they're getting a good value, so they're going to stay longer. So one of the things that I do in that circumstance is I have all my tenants on month-to-month leases that just never end. They just automatically renew every month. So there's never an end date. There's never a time for them to start looking for a new place unless they really want to move. A lot of the time, a lot of the problems with year leases is when that lease is coming up, they also know that there's probably a rent increase coming up, and they start saying, hey, they start looking like, is the rent going to go up? Am I going to be able to stay? I don't know if the landlord's going to renew my lease. So that gets people to start looking for other places or looking for a change. So I charge market rents on my rentals, but I put all my tenants on month to month. So, they really have to whenever they want to leave, they can leave. But, it doesn't get that in their mind that, oh,
Oh, nice.
my year's coming up, my lease is coming up. So just a thought process on that, just a
Yeah.
little nugget there. But I totally understand where you're coming from. And I think there's a lot of landlords out there that do that for the same reason, because turnover does cost a ton, but there is other ways to go about it where you can increase your cash flow and decrease your turnover. James, what do you think?
Well, let me turn it back on you, Patrick. Let me ask you a question, because I'm curious right now. How often would you do your rent increases if you're consistently on a month to month with all of your tenants? Would you do it on an annual basis, kind of just in your mind? You have a program to reach out to them on that basis, or would you do any more frequent or less frequent?
So because I make my units extremely nice, and I'm the landlord that's pushing the market rents. So for instance, I have a triplex that I bought 2 years ago that we haven't raised the rents in any of the units in 2.5 years because they're market rents. I mean, they're maybe only $50 below market rent. The tenants have been there for 2.5 years. They're great people. They don't cause any problems. Everything is fantastic. So I'm good. But for my new apartment buildings, I'm putting people on month to month. And when they're there for 12 consecutive months, it automatically will increase 5%. And that's going to be automatic. So I use a program called Rent Ready, and you put it in there, and it's in their lease. It'll automatically, after 12 consecutive months, increase by 5%. And it just keeps them on the month to month. I have put that in place now, and that is because I offered tenants from the property that I purchased instead of them moving out because they were so far from market rents, I put them in the middle. I said, hey, you're at 800, market's 12, let's go to 1,000. And then every 12 consecutive months, your rent will be increased by 5% to get them up to that rate. So that's just a strategy that I'm doing. So it's up in the air, you know, it's not all the same all around. But you know, if you're at market and tenants stay there for a really long time, you really don't have an issue with that at all. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure. I mean, I always have these conversations with my clients as well, you know, debating the tenant turnover and rent increases every year, because we all know as landlords, like the most expensive expense you're going to have every year when you have to deal with it is going to be tenant turnover. You got the paint, the carpets, the flooring, damage, miscellaneous. So I'm all on board with maybe keeping the rents reasonable and keeping a good tenant in there for the long haul. I will say though, when I picked up 8 single families in High Point, one of them just happened to have a tenant that was in there. I kid you not, 20 years. 20 years, the same rents. It was like $415 a month. And you know, our minds were just kind of blown at that. We felt really bad raising the rents, but we ended up
Yeah.
doing it, and they stayed, and they ended up being good tenants. But it's just kind of the calculus you got to make. So
I think those
exactly.
tenants also know that they've been getting such a good deal for so long that, all right, fine, you know, I'll pay more. It's about time. I actually, my first rental here, I inherited tenants, but I had told them, hey, I'm about to buy this. The minimum, you know, like obviously I'm gonna do some repairs, but the minimum rent will be, I can't remember if it was 16 or 18 or 1700. They're at 18 now. Um, so I gave them the choice, and they're like, it's still more affordable. Like a 2 bedroom, 1 bath here is well over 2 grand, maybe 2,800 here in Hawaii. So they're still getting a good deal, and they're paying way under market rent. But they like, you know, they like me, and I like them too. They're super nice. So it's, yeah, I don't have the heart. That's probably why it's nice to be in indie, where I don't have to have my emotions intertwined in business when it comes to people. Even though real estate is a people business, you know, a property manager is going to handle that part. I would have such a hard time, honestly. It would be super hard for me. Because I only own one rental here locally in my market, um, you know, I keep it nice, and I'm not losing money, you know. So
Well, you're emotionally tied to the property. You're emotionally tied to the people, and like, you're right. It is a people business, you know. So all you know, landlords in the beginning, I think, feel the same way. You know, it is a people business, but at the end of the day, it is a business, and you have to be fair. You know, firm but
yeah,
fair. That's how I treat all my tenants. It's firm but fair, and you know, that's just the way it has to be, because people see
yeah,
weakness and they take advantage of that. And the
yeah,
last thing you want to do is be taken advantage of. um and it will happen, and it's happened to me, you know. But most people are good, you know, most people are
mhm,
good, and if you're fair, um and treat everybody fair, things are going to work out to your benefit. So, you know, I think that's great. So I really want to ask, you know, so your goal is to get up to these 12 properties. What obstacle do you see that's going to hinder you on that journey to getting those 12 properties? Like what's the main obstacle that you face?
honestly, it's capital, raising capital. That's the hardest, because I always shoot for BRRRR numbers. So there's like the initial capital, and then the refinance. Appraisers are love-hate relationship with appraisers. Yeah, so I've got that. I'm gonna refinance those 2 properties that I bought in Indy, and I've had to change lenders 2 times already, twice. I'm on my third lender. Um, yeah, because I'm fighting appraisals. I've had to fight 2 appraisals. That was extremely draining in one day. And then their terms changed, and then the war affected the rate, so now it doesn't really work. So anyway, I was just like, this is so much. But yeah, I would say it's maybe it's not capital. It's just, I mean, I'm very conservative with my numbers, so technically it shouldn't be the case, but just the lending space is also changing. Like DSCRs are the rates are going higher. What else? The LTV is getting lower. I'm like, oh my gosh. So every time like you think it's a good deal, but I have friends who were buying properties to hold them over, but because of all these changes, they're having to flip them. They're gonna get rid of them because it's not working. It's no longer working after the refinance and lower LTVs. So, and I learned that on refinances, appraisals come in a bit lower. I'm like, what? You're supposed to appraise it, not know why you're appraising, but I don't know. That's just what I'm noticing with my deals at least.
I think it all really depends. I mean, it really depends on the day the appraiser's coming out there. Are they having a good day? Are they having a bad day? Are you prepared for the appraisal? Are you giving the appraiser a packet of the comps that you chose? Are you giving them a packet of all the upgrades that you've
Yeah,
done, with
yeah,
why you believe that it's there? Like, so if you're really trying to push the area and you're trying to be the best and get the highest and best appraisal for your property, you need to be as prepared as possible and give that appraiser every bit of information to get that number. So as much as it is the appraiser's fault, sometimes, or not fault, or the market's fault, or whatever,
responsibility or yeah,
you know, you also have to, make sure that you're doing everything in your power to get that number. And right now, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get screwed, that bought their property a year ago at 4%. Now they're trying to burr it and get a new loan at 5.5%. Cash flow is going down, appraisals going down, their capital's put in. So, but it's going to be a buying opportunity, 2 years from now, a year from now. So, that's kind of where we're at. James, what do you think about that?
Oh man, I'm tired of appraisals. My market where I'm at, it's a huge military base. So like 95% of the contracts we get into are VA. And then VA loans are just super strict with appraisal required repairs. And then just the appraisal in general just seems to be way harder to meet as opposed to like a conventional loan or a commercial finance deal. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's an interesting time to be investing right now. You've got all these things in play. There's so many factors that you could, try to sit there and analyze. And I acknowledge that, it's hard to underwrite deals because you're playing with all these numbers that are going super fast, like the appreciation
yeah, and
and the rate.
changing, yeah, changing, and then you hear on one side there won't be a change, this is gonna keep going. You hear on the other side, no, like things are happening. So interest rates are rising. Nobody's gonna be buying homes and all that. So, but to that subject, I guess the good thing is that I mean, we're always told to have a couple of exit strategies for that reason, right? If you've got a rent ready place, boom, like I'm buying a duplex, it's rent ready, it's in great condition, and I'm getting it under market value, great, like let's go. But but the um I just always remember, like, you have to make the best business decision, put your ego aside, your emotions aside, um, and again, just make the best decision here. I just like I have this thing also with taxes, like, so I made $80,000 of fix and flips last year. If I hadn't bought rentals, my tax bill would have been so high. And like in a way, I wasn't rushing into buying, but the 2 opportunities were great. They came and I was like, all right, let's just get it. not knowing, then I had to talk with my CPA, and he's like, "Oh, thank goodness you bought them, because now, your what you owe is just a lot lower." I'm like, "Oh." So now I'm kind of like screw fix and flipping, because like all that money is like going to someone else. It sucks. But I mean, I'm not opposed to it, that's for sure. So that's the other thing. Like, and now I really analyze everything as a buy and hold. They'll as a buy and hold. If it works as a buy and hold, it'll work as a fix and flip. So at least you're safe there, right? But and then in 6 8 months, when you're trying to refinance, the market is different, then get rid of it, right? Like, if it doesn't make sense. But yeah, I would say raising capital is one of them. And not gonna lie, it's a bit intimidating to buy a five unit property, I was putting offers, because a couple came on the market in Indy. So I still was putting offers on. And yeah, it was just a little bit different. I'm like, I don't know if I'm quite ready mentally and for that, but I know I'm pretty sure it'll happen. My agent over there is like sending me all these multifamily leads, and because I'm under contract on 3 properties right now, I was like, hey, let's just hold off. Let me get these to the closing table, at least to the closing table, because then my team's gonna take it over for renovations and such. But let me get them to the closing table. Like, it's quite an adventure or a journey to raise that much capital, right? I need to raise about $500,000 right now, so it's a lot.
Wow. I mean, you've got a ton going on, and I think you've really brought a ton of value to all the listeners out there
Hope
about,
so.
financial literacy, being able to make it, like wholetailing, doing a fix and flip, like buying rentals, doing all this in a short period of time, not worrying about the big goals, not worrying about the cash flow, just keeping your head down, grinding and pushing forward and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and knowing that one day it's all going to pay off. So I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. And I think that this is a perfect time to segue into what we call the big four. So, James, take it away.
All right, T. So here's our first one. I want you to tell us something that you do as it relates to your financial independence in your financial life that feels like a hack or a cheat code, something that you do that kind of makes everything fall into place, that's really going to help you get to where you're going.
Okay, so this might be a little bit not necessarily controversial, but I do not limit myself, in the sense that, one, I have way more appreciation for things that people call simple, but I value so much of my time with my daughter, that I don't care if I'm not, I don't know, I don't care if I'm not shopping. I don't care if I'm not doing something that I should be doing. If I'm with my daughter, I pick her up from school and we can spend time together. I'll do that. And if she wants a treat, I will get her a treat, because I don't want to deprive our life for financial freedom, because then it becomes, there's a negative connotation to that. It just becomes a burden. I'm sorry, we can't do this. Sorry, I can't get you the treat. Sorry, I can't buy you the toy. Like, no. So um, I've become not necessarily lenient, but I just kind of like, I'm aware of my budget and my finances every single day. I just, I'm not going to hold back on little pleasures for financial freedom, because I still know that, I will make this 2K or this 5K payment in a couple of months, and this $10 toy or this $15 treat is not going to kill that. Okay, so I don't know if that's a hack, but that's
No,
just my view on financial freedom and debt payoff.
I think that's super important. And there's a difference between, and I don't want to sound crass here, but being cheap and being intentionally frugal and smart with your money. And I went through like the cheap side of things too, in the past. And now I'm in the boat where you are, like where I want to enjoy some of the things I'm doing and have a good purposeful reason for wanting to make the money, and progress in life. But what do you got, Patrick? You got our next question.
Yes. So we call this one the resources. So basically, are there any books, podcasts, or influencers out there on the interwebs that have really shaped, formed, or guided, your financial independence journey, besides our number one answer that we know would it be, so we don't let anybody say it, is Rich Dad Poor Dad. So influencers, books, podcasts, what do you got for the people? Share it with us.
Okay. I will say that Rich Dad Poor Dad did not change my life the way it changed everybody's life. So I'm not against that, but no, it didn't. Read it. He didn't, sorry, but he didn't teach me anything I didn't know. I told you guys from a young age, I knew that. Lower debt income, boom, like I knew that, but didn't mean that I was doing it. Anyways, um, I'm pretty big on reading. I'm honestly, it's Audibles. Um, so this guy that I'm sort of into right now, and he's not necessarily an influencer, but he does push out some content. But it is Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you know him. He's not even in the real estate space whatsoever. He is in the entrepreneurship space. So products and services sold. He has a super, super good, inspiring story. Not your typical entrepreneur, suffered his whole childhood and like I made it, it's not quite like that. Of course, there were struggles, but so I really like him, Alex Hormozy. Um, a couple of books that I've read just this year, and that's why they're fresh. 12 and a Half by Gary V. Love just the emotions around business. It really opened my eyes and maybe my heart a little bit as well, and then valuing people, right? Like this is reality, we're valuing humans. The another good book was Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I can't really say that last name, but it's kind of pretty similar to like The One Thing, or can't remember what other books are kind of like that. It's just all about focus. He just takes it up a notch a little by just doing the essential, like prioritizing and um yeah, like highest efficiency in the amount of time you give it. So authors, and then this guy, this entrepreneur, Alex Hormozy, he may be an influencer. I think he has a huge following on social media and on YouTube. But I discovered him by accident. I ended up reading his book, 100 Million Offer. I think that's it. Influencers. I'm not so big on like social media influencers. One, I have a love-hate relationship with social media. Two, I think people put out what they want to put out. It's not necessarily reality, myself included. I mean, there are things that I'm not gonna share just by choice. I don't think it's gonna add value to anyone, so I'm not going to. But yeah, so anyway, just kind of think of social media as I'm not really big on the whole influencer thing.
Perfect. Well, I think that gives our listeners a lot to work from. I mean, there's a lot of great resources there. And, everyone's got that one thing that they like to pursue and follow, whether it's social media or the audibles or the books. So a lot of good content there. For this question, we're going to have you teleport yourself 5 years into the future. And you're going to be looking at your, surroundings, whether it's your business and your real estate, or maybe even your personal life. What does everything around T's world look like in the future, 5 years from now, whether business, personal, or real estate?
Okay. My daughter will be barely a teenager. So I'm going to do everything that I can to reinforce her identity in this world that's different from the world that I grew up in, a different society. So that's going to be one. I'm going to continue pushing financial literacy, not pushing, but just sharing and being a good example, a good steward of our family's financials. Investment wise, the goal, so why 12? Why 12 doors? The goal is to own 50 doors in 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So yeah, so maybe I'll be the owner of 50 doors. Hopefully half of that will be multifamilies.
That's amazing.
I love that. Like, huge goals. You're 2 years in, you're keeping it going. And that's a great vision for you and your family 5 years from now. So to wrap this all up, what's the best way people can get in touch with you if they want to reach out and say, hey, you were inspiring, all that good stuff? Where can they find you?
Instagram, because I leave messages unread until I can be present and get to them. So yeah, Instagram is the best way.
So what's your Instagram handle so people can reach out to you?
Tereva Invests, Tereva Invests.
Perfect. And we'll include that in our show notes so everybody can have that. Just click on it and go right to the Instagram page and see what T's up to.
Exactly. So, all right, everybody, you guys know the drill. If you guys like this podcast, if you guys hated this podcast, please leave us a review. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Sprout, all those. Go leave us a review, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Real FI podcast, where you learn from the investors that have lived the hard lessons for you. To connect with us during your pursuit of financial independence, be sure to join our community by following us on Instagram or emailing us at info@therealfi.com. If this content made you financially, mentally, physically, or spiritually richer, please make sure to leave us a positive review on your preferred content platform. Cheers to kicking the 9 to 5.